Alright, hey everybody. So this is Introduction to Computer Programming. This is our first class, so to speak, and we'll be going over a brief introduction to Java and an overview of programming in general. So what are we going to cover today? The importance of programming, starting with Java, some basic Java, basic and good programming practices, your first application in Java, and we're also going to do some simple variables and creating methods in Java, and then your small homework assignment. So, programming, why it's important and why it's relevant. It helps you understand how a computer works, how it thinks, essentially. It's a powerful and useful tool whenever you find yourself in need of a specific piece of software or code that does something that you can't just go out there and grab. Really comes in handy. It also teaches you to approach problems from this programming perspective, which, in my opinion, is a great way of problem solving for not just programming, but for all sorts of things in life and business, etc. And computers are in the mainstream. They're only getting more and more popular. These sort of skills are really going to help you out in the long run. And it's enjoyable. So, starting with Java. Java is becoming more and more widespread nowadays. A lot of companies are starting to notice the inherent security of Java. It's not as efficient as other languages like C++ or C, but it is a very powerful language. Even though it has to run through the Java virtual machine, it still comes in handy a lot. Not so much with hacking, but it will definitely come in handy when you need it. It's great because it's cross-platform compatible. I spelled compatible wrong, which means if you're on Mac, Linux, Windows, Java will run. It does automatic memory management garbage collection, which is something that C and C++ don't really do for you, so it makes life easier in that sense. It's an object-oriented programming language, which is basically what all programming languages are that get really used nowadays aside from assembly. We'll go over more about object-oriented programming in our next video tutorial. I like to call it's not as harsh on the new programmer as languages like C++, C are, because you don't have to micromanage as much with the intricacies of the code, the little tiny things, pointers, references, etc. It actually allows you to learn the fundamental concepts more, focus on the concepts and what's going behind the scenes, and really learn the mindset of programming and a programmer without having to make sure every little bit of your code runs well so that you don't run into various errors and bugs that are really hard to track down in C++. So, some of the basics with Java. In general, every source file is called a class in Java. Classes are objects. They contain variables like numbers, characters, strings, and there's all sorts of other variables and objects. We'll learn more about them later. And they also contain methods, which are also known as functions in most other languages. Methods do some operation or function, thus the name, whether a simple calculation or a very, very difficult calculation, graphical display, etc. Functions are kind of what really drive your program. And a Java application can consist of many classes. It can be a single Java class compiled into a jar file that you can run. It could be 100 classes. It sort of depends on the size of the project and how many classes you need. And again, we'll look at classes and objects in later tutorials. And at least one class in the Java program must contain a main method. This is where the program starts from. It's what we call the entry point in computer programming. It's when you run the program, that's where it begins from, and from there you can set it to go to one function or another, or one method to another, create new classes, variables, etc. But the main method is always going to be the starting point. Just a note, in Java, the source file's file name has to match its class name. So if you have a main.java file, that's got to be related to your class main. That's basically just the semantics of the language. It really won't compile if you don't have that. So, a brief overview of good programming practices. There's a lot written on this subject, and we're just going to go over it very briefly to help keep your code clean and make you more efficient at programming. We normally name classes starting with a capital letter, such as your main class. The first letter is capitalized. If it's multiple words, you capitalize all the words, but you keep them in sort of one thing with no spaces, or you can put underscores in, as we'll see in a minute. Variables and methods are usually named starting with the lowercase letter. For example, this integer perhaps represents the position of a mouse at any given point in time, or a place on the screen where you want something to happen, or it could be something on a graph, anything. Normally variables and methods, or functions, are going to start with the lowercase, and then every word after will be uppercase. It's just general semantics for programming in general, in most cases. Java is, we'll see in a minute, case sensitive. The names of classes, variables, and methods cannot contain spaces. Instead, use underscores if you need to put a space between something. A space to Java signals a end of a command or a declaration or something along those lines. So if you need to separate things, you use underscore. Names also can't begin with numbers in Java. So if you had some variable, some integer that was, you had three integer variables all with the name cat, you wouldn't say 3cat, but you'd do cat1, cat2, cat3. Variables, classes, methods cannot start with a number. Names also contain certain characters, a few of which are the hyphen, comma, period, asterisk, percent sign, slash, some other ones like brackets, equal signs, greater than, less than, etc. Because these are sort of operators or commands in Java. So stick to letters, numbers, and underscores. So some more good programming practices that are really, really key. This one I can't stress enough. It's something that took me a long time to really force myself to do, and it's really important. You need to comment the hell out of your code. As many comments as you can put in there, do it, because the more you write down, the more comments you put in, when you go back to it in a week, a day, a year, you'll understand what's going on. It's very important to document with comments what every function does, what variables do what, etc. And keep your code neat, well formatted, and consistent in a way, and that way it's easier for you to read later, it's easier for me to read later, it's easier for someone trying to help you out to read later, and it's just in general a good practice. So we're going to get started by writing our first simple Hello World application.